It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Thursday, January 18th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content. It is really curious about this forward situation for the Flyers.
Yeah.
There's a lot of adjustments to be made. Plus, the Flyers face the Stars, and we are going to talk about draft eligible prospect Sacha Boisvert all on today's show.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on the app formerly known as Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. We are at Locked On Flyers on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Twitter as well. You can find us over on YouTube. We're on the SiriusXM app or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Russ, the Flyers are facing the Dallas Stars tonight. We're going to get into that preview in just a minute, but I think that there's really important conversation to continue from yesterday's show where we were talking about, some of the tweaks that we would make just to take this team to the next level, because it's a very good team right now, but there's always room for improvement. So we were talking about that. And we talked a little bit about the forward situation because on that road trip, they didn't bring anybody with them as an extra forward. And so they did 11-7. And then Noah Cates checked back in with Sean Couturier injured. So it kind of worked out for that last game. But now we're kind of, between a rock and a hard place, especially if Sean Couturier wants to check back into the lineup. We're at the max roster size right now. Like, what's the situation here?
Yeah, I mean, I saw a tweet from Anthony DeMarco of the fourth period saying that their Flyers for a week have had internal discussions about maybe sending Brink down or maybe even Brink and Foerster. And I'm never against a guy playing in the AHL or going back if they need a reset. I haven't seen anything egregious enough that I would send these guys down. Now, if they're not producing offensively, that's fine. But there's a lot of Flyers veterans that aren't producing offensively either. And so my feeling is just, why would you do that? Why, knowing that you are trying to rebuild in some way, shape, or form, why would you do that? Because if you do that, the first thing is, from the player's perspective, is they see it as a demotion. There's no other way around it. Maybe it'll be good for them in the future. Maybe it won't be. But the idea is, for the first couple of games, it's a demotion to them. And that's and I just don't see the sense in it. Things are going good with these guys in the lineup, regardless if they're scoring or not. And I think they're doing enough little things that you could say, leave them in there. That's how they're going to learn. But they're not going to learn if they don't get enough NHL time. They have to get it.
Yeah, it's interesting because with Tyson Foerster, I can't even count the number of times at this point where John Tortorella said, even when he doesn't get on the board, Foerster is playing every other aspect of the game great. And he loves what he sees from him. So, like, to send him down based on everything that we know seems like out of character for Tortorella, I think, just because he likes his play so much and feels like, the scoring will come eventually. Now, with Bobby Brink, I can see why that discussion might take place because I don't think his play away from the puck has been quite as good as Tyson Foerster's.
That's fair, but it's never going to be either.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, they're two totally different players, and I don't think it's been bad. I just don't think it's been to the level of Tyson Foerster. There's a wide swath of quality in that gap, right?
Yeah.
And I think Brink works so hard. You can see it every single game, and he's aggressive on the forecheck. He digs into the corners, and for a guy his size to play that style at the NHL level, literally, what is going to the AHL going to help?
Yeah, I just, and he said maybe Lexell gets the call up. Okay, that's fine. But again, Lexell's not going to be put in a great situation either. He never has been. He never will be, or at least hasn't been yet. I'll say it like that. So again, I don't understand why you're even thinking about that. I think you just need to look at the fourth line and make a tough decision there. And if that means, hey, Nick Delorier, you put him out there on the market or you send him down to the minors. If somebody claims him, great. If not, then that's that. I mean, he's coming to the end of his rope as far as what he is good on the ice, as what he's useful on the ice. And I'm not saying Hathaway's great. He's only marginally ahead of him. But I'm just saying there's no reason to keep those two anymore. There just isn't.
Right, and there's some redundancy there for sure. I think Hathaway serves the physicality,
Yes.
quotient that the Flyers need on the forward side. If you need somebody to get into a fight at some point, you also have Nick Seeler in the wings,
Right.
ready and willing
I
to
mean, even
do that.
Forster can fight. I mean, he can.
Yeah, yeah, and that shouldn't be the priority, right?
Oh,
Like, so if you're looking at it, there's nothing that Nick Delorier does that nobody else does.
right. Right.
And I think that's ultimately the conclusion that you have to come to at this point if you put yourself in this situation where you have too many defensemen and you seem unwilling to, cut the dead weight here or, prioritize your blue line.
Right.
And so you want to carry 8 defensemen. Well, you know, your forwards
And
are
you're
going
gonna
to
have to make
suffer for
another
it.
tough decision, and it shouldn't come at one of those guys' expense, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And I also think, we've been having this conversation about centers on the team and the center depth. If you're going to make a call up here, seems like you want somebody who can play center
Yeah.
because you need more guys that can rotate there,
Yeah, I mean, if you
especially.
call Blazinski up, you could push everybody else up then.
Yep, yep, and you can put everybody else on the wing where they belong.
Yeah.
You can put Cates back on the wing, which is where you
Mhm.
want him in
Right.
theory based
If you
on
wanna get
past history.
scoring, yeah.
Yeah, and then, you have cover if Sean Couturier is out for any stretch of time that's
Right.
become significant. Now I don't know what, all of this means in terms of is Couturier still out or is he coming back in and
I
that's
mean,
why
we
they're in
haven't
this
heard anything
predicament.
from I'm guessing he's not playing against Dallas, but we haven't heard anything, so I don't know.
Yeah, as of recording, at least we have not heard anything on that front. But yeah, I think that, Lixell's great. We've talked about Lixell till the cows come home in terms of what we think of his play, and he's been doing great down in Lehigh Valley, and he deserves a call up. But in terms of what the Flyers need right now, if you're gonna carry an extra forward, it's got to be somebody who can play center.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think the center position is really, something that they should lock down, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, I think so. Well, locked on, locked down, same thing, right?
Yeah.
um, yeah, it's just a real interesting conversation here because I just don't know, like, if they were going to get themselves into this predicament by trading for Drysdale, which I don't, disagree with that move because, they said
No.
they wanted to, if they were going to trade Cutter Gauthier, they were either going to aim for a top center or, a top 6 center or a top defenseman, right? And so they got the best they could in one of those 2 positions, fine, but you're also gonna have to be willing to deal with the consequences that
Right, you
come
can't
with
hold
that.
on to everybody. You can't.
Yeah, but if you're gonna hold on to some people, I mean, wouldn't you wanna hold on to Tyson Foerster and Bobby Brink as opposed to Nick Delorier?
I would think.
Yeah, I think that's the issue here, but, we'll see what the Flyers decide to do here. And it'll be interesting to see how the lineup shakes out. Meanwhile, the Flyers will be facing the Dallas Stars at home tonight at 7 p.m. You can catch all of that action on the Sirius XM radio network for the hometown broadcast. Search for Flyers, and we will be talking about that game coming up next. On tomorrow's show, we will be recapping tonight's game against the Dallas Stars. Plus, we're going to preview the next game up against the Colorado Avalanche. And we've been kind of going through the Central Division gauntlet over the past couple of weeks. And it is real tough facing the Stars and the Avs in consecutive games. The Stars are 6-3-1 in their last 10. They're third in the Central behind the Winnipeg Jets, who the Flyers just won against, but will be facing real soon again, and the Colorado Avalanche, who are in second place in that division. We talked about Dallas recently when we were previewing the Wild game because Dallas thwacked the Wild in a home and home series. Then they lost to the Preds, but won versus the Blackhawks and the Kings. And man, the Kings are a whole other story because
They're a weird story now. Yeah.
they've been faltering, and
Yeah.
the Stars beat the Kings 5-1, which is not something I would have expected earlier in the season. But the Kings are in a world of trouble right now, I think.
Yeah, they are.
But with Dallas, I think the biggest story recently is Jake Ottinger returning to action. He was out for a little over a month. He came back in last Friday, and so far so good.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he had a freaky kind of injury, so it's good to see him back. May not be good for the Flyers, but you never want anybody to be out that long. The interesting thing is what happens with Miro Heiskanen, because whether he plays or not, that matters a lot in the
Yeah.
lineup, because if he's in there, that defense just got a lot harder to face. So that's something where you're going to have to worry about. I think the second line of Wyatt Johnston, Hintz, and Jason Robertson is one that is very hard to handle. Like the Marchment, Duchesne, Seguin is a nice skill line that has some speed, but the other one is big and skilled and fast. And I think that's the one that the Flyers are going to have more trouble with. So, that's we'll see how that sort of shakes out. Now they're at home, so they can control it a little bit, the Flyers, with the last change. But yeah, that second line is the one that I really would watch out for. And it's not like, and Pavelski, I kind of remember him doing well against the Flyers too. So that's another guy.
He does. Yeah, that second line, Jason Robertson and Rupe Hintz are the Stars' top 2 point getters at the moment, with Robertson just above the point per game mark. And, obviously we know he had a tremendous season last year, and, hasn't reached quite those levels this year. But honestly, repeating that kind of productivity, I don't know that anybody, it maybe other than, Connor McDavid, would you expect to be able to do that? But
Yeah.
yeah, that line is something to be reckoned with. Rupe Hintz also plays really well
Oh yeah.
against the Flyers. He always seems to score here. With Miro Heiskanen, you mentioned he has been injured, but he's on the road trip with the team, with the expectation that he could slate back in very soon. Wouldn't surprise me if Flyers were the ones that had to deal with the consequences
Yeah.
of that. And so I think that is going to be a huge difference, to your point, on the blue line side of things, because their blue line is very good. I wouldn't say it's like the greatest, but it's very, very good, and that just makes it elite level.
Right. Right. It's if Haskinen's in there, it's elite level defense and goaltending. And so those
Yeah.
are the parts the Flyers are going to have to they're going to have speed in this lineup. Like, this is not the lineup to go 11-7, and this isn't the lineup to make sure you've got the ultimate fourth line either. But again, most likely one of those two things is going to happen. Unless Sean Couturier comes back, then that changes things a little bit, perhaps.
Right. And, you talk about the speed. Well, I think, this year, as we've talked about a bunch recently. The Flyers are actually a much faster team
They
than
are.
they have been in the past. And when I've looked at the edge, team comparison stats, like usually the other team is better in things like goals and shooting percentage, but the Flyers are much better in speed. With Dallas, they're much, much closer than most of the other teams,
Yeah.
in terms of, the skating speed.
Yeah.
Flyers shooting is much harder than Dallas is overall. They have like harder and faster shots. And of course, the Flyers have more shots on goal than anybody because they take a
Right.
million shots. But you look at the other stats, and the Dallas Stars, I believe, have the like second or third highest shooting percentage in the NHL, something like that, where the Flyers, as we've talked about, are around 8.5%, and the Dallas Stars are at 12.2%.
It's a big difference.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's a big difference. And so this is one where tactically you really have to play the matchups here. You can't just go with what's been working because this is a different team.
Yeah, so not only do you have to match that speed, you have to deal with shot prevention, and you have
Right.
to deal with high danger shot
Right.
prevention, which is gonna
This
be,
is
I
not a
think.
Mark Stahl game either. It's not.
No, because he cannot skate back there
He's
to
not going to
to
get back
get.
quick enough
No.
to be able to help enough. We've seen that it's been problematic in some games.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think, we also have talked this season about the balance between the aggressive forecheck version of the Flyers and the stay-at-home D version of the Flyers. I think are going to have to lean a little more heavily toward that stay-at-home D
Right.
that they can do. And there's going to be a lot of block shots in this game.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean, mark
there's no
my words.
question they're going to be black and blue, especially if they're going to win this. You almost can guarantee it. So yeah, I mean it's a premier goalie matchup. You probably have Hart against Ottinger, and then
Mhm.
Dallas needs the points too. So it'll be a tough one. Like this will be a really good game. Like you know, the coaching will matter in this one. The power play will matter in this one.
Yep.
I don't know what
Yep.
Dallas's power play is at. I don't know if you have that, but I imagine it's pretty good.
It's like 10th in the
Yeah, that's good.
NHL. So at
That's a good power.
23%.
Yeah, so
So a little over
you don't want to put
23%.
them on the power play either, really.
No, no, you do not. And you say like, you don't want to be on the PK here, or like the Flyers power play isn't gonna be useful here. But I don't, the Dallas Stars PK is also very, very good.
So they
So
have a lot
it's
of the
like
same.
right under the Flyers.
Yeah, so they have a lot of the same attributes.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is one where you got to really be up for the task. Like you can't have that sleepy kind of first period. I think that could cost them.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you look at where Dallas scores their goals from, they are net front. Like
Yeah,
they are heavy into net front and heavy from, just to the side of the slot, between kind of the dot and that net front area. They score a lot of goals there, which makes sense because if they're a speedy team, they're going to score on the rush a lot. And that's where guys take their shots from, on the
yeah.
rush.
Plus Johnston can get in the crease, and so could Radek Faxa. He's a big guy too. So they have a few guys that'll play in that area too.
Yeah, so, I think that this is gonna be a real, like, tough game for the Flyers. It's going to be physical. We talked about they're gonna have to block a lot of shots, and this is a game that can wear the Flyers down, and I think this is where they're gonna have to figure out a way, like, if they're ahead, to close it out in
Right,
that 3rd period and just hunker down, but not turtle,
right.
which they've generally done a good job this year of not turtling. I think that's
Yeah, I
happened.
I don't think they've lost too many leads because they've taken their foot off the gas, so I give them credit for that.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that could come into play for this one. But, very much looking forward to tonight's game, and, of course, we're gonna recap it on tomorrow's show. In the meantime, as promised earlier this week, we're gonna start getting heavy into NHL draft coverage and kind of weekly look at some draft eligible prospects as we approach the 2024 NHL draft. And we are going to talk about Sacha Boisvert coming up next.
We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of the employers agree. Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to the other job sites. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences. So the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Listeners of Locked On Flyers will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. So go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube to subscribe. Russ, Sacha Boisvert is a center who shoots left. He's from Quebec and turns 18 in March. He's 6'2", about 180, and is currently, generally ranked in the 20 to 23 range in the early rankings for the first round of this upcoming draft. Why did you want to talk about him specifically?
Well, I'll tell you, he's proudly 180 because I think he's put on 15 pounds of muscle in the year. So that's something where he's feeling really good about himself. I wanted to talk about him because he's been really on a good scoring clip in the USHL, and he's not getting a lot of press just yet. And I feel like he's a guy that could move up in the draft a little bit. So he's a center. He's 6'2". He's really good on faceoffs. He's not quite where he could be yet because I think when he goes up against some of the stronger guys, they can beat him with strength. But he's got really good hands and he's fast on the faceoff. So that's something where, I feel like that can improve. Watching him in the All-American Prospects game, he was on the fourth line, right? So he was a little limited that way, but he did get some scoring chances. And when there's some room out there, he does know how to play make, but he also knows how to find that room for himself and get scoring chances. So he is kind of like he really is one of those centers that can play make or score. And we're seeing more of those guys. And it seems like teams, because it's getting, harder to score in the NHL at times, even though scoring is up, in key points, it seems like teams are still struggling to score. You are looking for guys that can kind of do both. So that's a big help too. I'll tell you, he's got perfect English. The fact that he's from Trois-Rivières and has perfect English is an amazing thing because I don't think I would have perfect French if I was his age. His age has only been here, a few years. So he's really assimilated well. He's going to go to North Dakota. That means he'll learn how to play away from the puck really well. So whoever drafts him, knowing that the guy's going to North Dakota, that's a big plus. Like, that is your development program right there.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. We have talked a little bit in the last year or so about how the Q is not as good a developmental league as it used to be. And there's a lot of goals, but having those top skills translate to the NHL game is not as strong as it used to be. And so for a guy from Quebec to jump to the USHL for development and then the American university system and playing college hockey, I think it says a lot about what his goals are, right? Because if he actually wants to develop his game and make a go of it, like, I think he's following the right path.
Yeah, and it's a path that used to be kind of rare, but now it's a path that's, I think, taking place a little more often, and it's interesting because, again, I feel like, I don't know what his goal number was right now. I think he's in the 20s, in the USHL. Maybe he's got like 15, 20, something like that. And I feel like if he was in the queue, he'd probably be one of those guys that, ends up with like 35, 38 goals, But in the
Right.
USHL, it's tougher because the defense is harder, it's more physical. And so I think this is better for him long term because you don't, just piling up points is not always the name of the game. And again, we're hearing more that, that play away from the puck that comes up every day I talk scouting with anybody. So the fact that, he will definitely get better at it
Right.
over time is a big deal. That's the other thing. We also have to take into account a lot of teams now, when they're matching up players, are also matching up where they're going to school. So, like, if a team wants to, draft a kid, sometimes they'll ask them, "Are you really committed to them, or are you thinking about, would you go somewhere else? Would you go to Canadian Junior? Would you go?" Because a lot of times, some teams are like, "Well, we don't love that team for you. Here's what we envision for you. If you went there, would you be open to that?" And that's where we see some guys who will change their commitment. Yeah, he's got 19 goals right now, which is good. It's really, really good.
Yep.
If you could score 30 in the USHL, you're really doing something. So, it's possible he might be able to. But that's the big thing as far as development is where's the next step that you're going, because again, you're not getting to the NHL for 3 to 5 years, and that's where teams really have to pay attention to who the coaches and who the programs are where these kids are going, because some of them are just very successful, and North Dakota is very successful.
Yeah, it is. And, he has those 19 goals in 32 games. He's got a total of 33 points. So the fact that he's, as a center is scoring at a good clip, but also has the assists, showing playmaking, I think that's important as well to note.
It is important. Like, he's a guy, he could score on the rush. He's got a tricky sort of wrist shot where he changes up and shortens his shot a little bit, like shortens the stick. And I think it gets there quicker as a result. I didn't get a chance to talk to him about that, but it's interesting. This year, he's 48% in the league on faceoffs. That's good. That'll get better. And he'll lay in, an occasional hit. And he's got some size, and he's got, a little bit more room to put on a little bit more weight. So, this is a guy I think that's going to be pretty sought after. And as you know, the Flyers could use a center. So depending on where they're picking, he could be a guy that they get interested in very quickly.
Right, and I saw some highlights of his, and he can score highlight reel goals,
Oh
but
yeah,
I think that, he's really, learned to balance his game out a little bit more, and that he can't be a one-trick pony, so he's
right.
really developing those other skills, and he'll be able to do that really well at North Dakota.
Yeah, and he's working on all those things. Like, he understands it, he gets it. Whoever's been advising him is doing the right thing, because they understand that, yeah, you're not going to be like a superstar in the NHL, but to get to the NHL, you're going to have to do X, Y, and Z. And he's working on it. So the
Yeah.
speed's there, the hockey sense is there. He's got the height. He's got a frame that, he can get a little stronger. Like, this is a guy, you just got to give him the time to develop. But there's a lot of talent here.
Yeah, I think, he should be a really interesting option for the Flyers, especially where they might end up with, one or the other of their first round picks, that they
Yeah, if they
have,
end up at
and
like 20 and 25, um, you're probably looking at a center or a defenseman for that first pick. So he's probably a guy that is in that list if he isn't taken already.
right, right. Well, we'll see if he moves up or down in the rankings, as we get closer to the draft. He's gonna be the first name on the spreadsheet that I start, so, hopefully by next week, we'll have that up for you, and I'll pull some of the profiles from previous episodes we did, in the fall as well, but yay, draft season, we love it. That'll do it for today's show. Of course, like I said, we'll be back tomorrow to recap tonight's game against the Stars. We'll talk about the apps. And as a reminder, we always want to hear from you. So if you've got mailbag questions for us, you can send them in via Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail, or comment over on YouTube. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Have a great day, everyone.